Welcome to the week 3 go-to session. So this is number 3 out of 4 for this month. Thanks to the people in attendance. Thanks to the people who are watching this after the fact. I hope people who don't attend live are watching it. I think I can pretty much guarantee that the people who do either attend or watch tend to have fewer stumbles. So keep doing it, okay? We're in week 3. Just give you an update. From week 2, I already graded everyone's check your flow activity. That's one where you color coded your week 1 summary, wrote a short reflection. I've just started cracking your second summary. Okay, but tomorrow is going to be the big day for me to hopefully finish those out. I might need to work past the midnight hour, but last week I think I finished around like 1 a.m. I have until end of Thursday to grade everything, but I try to get things done sooner than that. So we're in week 3. There are a couple different important changes. You have one more grammar check-in. Anybody here take the week 2 grammar check-in? Can anybody confirm that you just get to take it a couple times and get rewarded with an automatic 100 and move forward? I think that's how it works. But you got another one in week 3. Okay, so don't forget about that because it's basically a gift 5 points. And so we're talking about 2 major activities, okay? Each worth 10%. One is due on Wednesday, so that's tomorrow. One is due on Sunday. This one, let's talk about it. It's a little bit like week 1 because you have 2 paragraphs to write. But unlike week 1, it's not a discussion, so you don't have to worry about a classmate response. And I'm going to try to explain this assignment as simply as possible because we used to have slides that described what MAP stands for, right? Motives, attitudes, and perspectives, but it was always sort of too esoteric or too complicated to explain. So I'm going to explain it just in common sense terms. You have 3 pairs of articles. One on cat leashing, like should you put a leash on your cat and take it for a walk? Sounds crazy to me. I don't know. Like cats, don't they just do their own thing? Like they love you until they don't love you, and then they just get up and leave you because they don't care. Whereas dogs will literally let you pet them forever. Like they'll go without food, they'll go without sleep. As long as you give them attention, they'll stay with. Anyway, so here are 2 readings on the issue of cat leashing. I guess some people do it. So you get one kind of pro article, one sort of very much like what you've been doing so far, right? You've been reading 2 pairs of essays, either on Jay-Z and the NFL, Harry Potter, streaming music, etc. So here are 2 more, or excuse me, 3 more pairs, kind of opposing pairs of articles. Be careful. The people who are here tonight won't have this problem. That's why it's awesome to either attend the lecture or watch the lecture if you can't attend live, although it is in the instructions, okay? But this is like a one-time assignment. You are sort of doing this to practice for what's going to be due this Sunday. This Sunday, you're going to choose one of the articles that you summarize so far, just one, and you're going to respond to it. You're going to sort of be in conversation with it. So to get you practicing, because so far you've just been summarizing. So now that you finally get to respond to the article, it means you should be able to look at the article with some care, and that's what we're having you do here, okay? So you're going to choose one of the pairs. So yeah, don't choose like, oh, I'll choose this article and this article on emojis. No, because why would I ask you to discuss cat leashing and emojis in the same paragraph? So don't do that. The other problem I see is that people think that from this point forward, you're working with these articles. No, this is just for this assignment. Okay, you're reading these articles just for this assignment and nothing else. To prepare you to return to the 2 articles you've been working with. Okay, so if you chose the video game articles or the Jay-Z articles or the Netflix articles, those are the ones that you're dealing with all month. It's not most students, but I do see every month like a handful, and I feel so bad because it's like, guys, I talked about in the lecture. It's also in the instructions. Every activity comes with a completed example. So, I mean, I get it. I also can ignore instructions sometimes. I'm not saying I'm a perfect person. I can be online and see a wall of text and think, I don't want to read through all this. So I get it. Sometimes people don't want to read everything, but I don't know. Like there are 3 different ways, kind of like firewalls, to make sure that people don't screw up: the lecture, the instructions, and the completed example. But yeah, if people don't look at any of those things, that's when mistakes get made. So you'll choose either the 2 cat leash, the 2 emoji, or the 2 social media articles. And then you're going to write 1 paragraph about each article. That's it. Okay, 1 paragraph each. And it says identifying the map in each. Again, I'm going to make this as simple as possible. You just have to kind of interrogate each article. Okay, read it and respond to it critically. And I give you some questions here, map help, to consider. Like examine the title. The title sometimes indicates a lot. Is the author's argument or stance convincing? Why or why not? Read against the grain. In other words, imagine you're skeptical or on the other side of things. I read things all the time that, okay, I may not agree with it. I'm not going to touch politics with a 10-foot pole, but let's say I'm reading something where it represents a position that I don't agree with. I can still read it and determine whether it's convincing or not, or where it could have been stronger. So yeah, even if you think cat leashing is crazy, the one that kind of supports the idea of walking your cat, pretend that you're either on the same side if you don't really feel that way, or you're on the opposing side if you do agree with it. Okay. In other words, step outside of yourself. And sometimes I tell people this in my feedback when I spot sentences that, yes, make sense to you. And they make sense to me because I've read the articles you're summarizing, but a general reader would feel lost because you're not explaining things fully. So I sometimes say, step outside of yourself. Read your own work as if you're not you. So that's kind of what this is talking about. Read the articles as if you're not you. What evidence does the author use? What evidence could the author use? Where are moments where the author's voice or tone is coming through, right? Where it's not just neutral or objective like factual reporting or like a summary, but the voice or tone is kind of strong. Common issues to spot, information that's skewed by emotion or is entirely driven by emotion. Things that you can just feel, right? Trust your gut, by the way. Yes, spend time with it, read it closely, read it a second time if you need to, or skim through it a second time. But just try to feel where there's stuff that you feel like could have been mentioned but isn't, right? That's missing evidence or unbalanced evidence. So they briefly mentioned something that you thought would be useful, but they don't really give it much time or attention. Articles where you think opinion is dominating far too much. Opinion is great. We can write from opinion. But is it overwhelming the article to such a point where they should be folding in facts, research, or this lack of acknowledgement of other views, right? Usually it's typical that you do acknowledge, you anticipate what people are going to say. So if you're anti-social media, you're sort of ready for what people are going to say and address those things. So here are a bunch of bullet points. And my advice is simply to, let's say you choose the emoji articles. Read each one, write a paragraph for each, and in each paragraph, you're essentially responding to it. You're criticizing or critiquing it, okay? And you have these prompts to help you. Now, not every prompt may apply, but I think there's enough here to get you going, okay? And you do have an example. Let's see, that's the rubric. Here's the example. Now, obviously, this example, it's not in any of the articles that are actually an option because then people would be tempted just to imitate what the person said. But you can see here are 2 articles on, what's the topic? Video games, okay? Looks like it has to do with voice acting in the video game industry. So those of you who are interested in video games, you can, Matthew asks, are we writing in third person? It's up to you. You can write in first person. Like here, I don't think this person uses first person at all. It doesn't use I. Sure, you can use I. This is a pretty, don't get me wrong. It should be proofread. It should look kind of like the example, right? But yeah, it's not, you should be paying attention to like proofreading, spelling, and grammar and all that. So it should not be something you just crank out and slap together. But yeah, you don't have to worry about, like with the summary, that there should be no first person. I'm not looking at it that way. I can tell you that a lot of times, yeah, the first person is unnecessary, especially when it's things like I believe, I think, I feel, because it's obvious that you believe and think and feel because it's your writing. But no, you don't get like penalized for that. So third person is probably perfectly fine. But if you slip into a first person voice because it's more comfortable for you to talk about the 2 articles you read, that's fine. Okay. So yeah, it's a pretty low stakes assignment in the sense that I just want to make sure that you've read each article and that you've kind of gotten used to responding to it in some way. Because this is preparing you for the assignment that is due Sunday. Um, you've been summarizing so far, which is great, but we want you to have a little bit of practice of actually reading something, a pair of articles, reading them with some care, and getting used to responding to them, examining them. Because in some way, you're going to have to do that when you respond to whichever article you choose to enter into conversation with for this Sunday's assignment. So let's switch to there. Though if you do have further questions about this, or if you don't think I've gone over it carefully, I think it's much simpler than it sounds. We give this assignment very fancy language. We call it MAP, and that stands for motivation, attitudes, and what is it? Perception, perspectives. But it's much simpler than that. It's really getting some practice just responding to an article critically. Okay? And you have a bunch of prompts to make you think of different things and an example. Okay, so let's take a look at Sunday's assignment. Oops. Sunday. Here we go. So week 3. So, okay, no more summarizing. Awesome. I'm kind of torn. On the one hand, the first 2 assignments I think are easier, right? They're just summaries. And they have to be at least 300 words, and they're not terribly difficult. And if someone that does have a misstep in week 1, well, awesome. They get to do it again in week 2. Or if you did really well in week 1, just do it again. But I do hear from some students who are like, really? More summarizing? Don't I ever get a chance to say anything? Yes, finally you do. And I do think there is value in, as I said, in the week 1 or maybe even week 2, that you should read something and fully understand it and show that you understand it before you respond. Because I think I mentioned that, yes, people are perfectly awesome at sharing opinions. Don't hesitate to share them, but maybe we'd like to encourage people thinking, listening, reading first, and then responding. So, okay, so you've spent 2 weeks with 2 different articles. Now it's time to respond to one of them. Okay, so you're going to choose one of the articles, whichever one you want. I think in some cases, like for some reason, not that many people are writing about the Harry Potter article this month. Usually, a bunch of people do. This month, I only have a few. Uh, but with like that one, I don't know. The first one tends to work better because the author actually takes a position, arguing that the Harry Potter books, while terrific and valuable, they don't quite rise to the level of literature. Like that's a pretty big thesis that you can respond to. Whereas the week 2 article is more difficult. I think maybe the video game articles in some ways as well. Although I've seen good examples of both. But Mark Lewis's one, I think, has also a pretty clear stance that video game addiction is overrated or that it's overstated. It certainly shouldn't be considered a disorder. Like that's something you could absolutely enter into conversation with. Whereas the second article is more like an interview about what people are doing to combat video game addiction. Anyway, you'll choose, but you choose one. Okay, it's in week 4 that you'll fold in both articles. But for this one, you're just going to choose one of those 2 articles, and yeah, read the article again. I highly encourage that, and write a 400 to 500 word essay that includes the following: your own take on the topic. Okay, whether you agree, disagree, or you're somewhere in the middle. You should try to touch on a point that the article either leaves out or just glosses over, right? Glosses means it mentions it, but barely. It could say more. And you should have at least one direct quote or paraphrase from the article with an in-text citation. We're going to cover that. Okay, I'm going to show you in real time how to do that. Actually, I should have well, I'll go back to it. I'll choose one of the articles at random and try to quote from it. You get some tips for writing a response. I'm going to basically give you the same information, but this basic tip is important to have the best discussion possible in each paragraph. Refer to the article first, then follow with your opinion. Okay, this will allow your voice and the authors to be in conversation. Right, and that's a good strategy in general because the general reader, here's the thing, you have to pretend that you're writing a piece that could be like the Mark Lewis piece or like I always forget, is it Michael Eric Dyson? No, Eric Michael Dyson, right? Eric Michael Dyson. or the David Sims piece, or the Sarah Rainey piece. You're doing the same thing. Your piece, in other words, a perfect stranger should be able to read your essay and read it from start to finish without stumbling. This means you have to explain things. And a good way to make sure that you're explaining things is always refer to the article first, right? Like explain what you want to discuss and then follow with your opinion instead of diving right in. I do see that sometimes where students aren't taking the time to explain things. And I always tell them, like, read as if you're not you. Pretend you're not you. Pretend you're a plain Jane or Joe Schmo who has come across your own paper that has just been left behind on a cafeteria table or a library table. Can you read it from start to finish without, you've never read the article, you know nothing about this class, you know nothing about this assignment? Can you pick it up and read it from start to finish? If you can really honestly step outside of yourself and pretend that you're not you, you should be able to catch these moments where things aren't fully explained. I do have a strategy you can follow. So again, you can either take a screenshot or just go back to this part of the lecture once it's uploaded and freeze when you're on the screen. But here's a basic format, okay? So you're going to have an introduction paragraph where you ideally find an interesting way to introduce and define the topic. Video game addiction, Harry Potter, streaming media, etc. Okay, so if you're writing about one of the video game addiction articles, find some way to present this topic. Or just present the article, okay? If you can find an opening hook, meaning someone's been mentioning Fortnite in the chat, right? So, you could mention like the rage over Fortnite and how the popularity of this game has made you think in general about the issue of video game addiction, which Mark Lewis just happens to write about. Or you can dive right in, right? Mark Lewis's article, blah, 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 talks about, but basically you're going to find your way to kick things off. And then you make sure that the opening paragraph ends with your thesis. If that word sounds too fancy, it just means you are ending the paragraph with your stance. Okay? Basically, whether you agree, disagree, or somewhere in between. And then the body of the paper, you're going to, yes, present the first point you wish to make from the article. Okay? The second point you wish to make. Third point, right? So this idea of one topic per paragraph. So if there are 3 things in the Mark Lewis article that you wish to respond to, identify those 3 things, and those will become the topics of these 3 paragraphs, right? First, the article states that, and then you take time to explain it, and then you respond with what you have to say. Then there should be a short conclusion where you sort of echo your main point again and bring the essay to a close. Okay, someone says they have a hard time confusing summary and analysis. Okay, well, the good thing is we're past summary. So if you had any issues with summary, like that part's over. So here you do get to dive in. I mean, I understand the confusion. The assignment we just went over that's due on Wednesday, I'm asking you to take a close look at something and critically. It's not so much analyze, it's reading it with such care that you have something to say about the article. So yeah, if the words analyze or critique sound too scary, just think about it in different terms. You've read something carefully enough, that you feel like you have something to say in response. Okay? So yeah, don't make it you're not reading between the lines. You're not, this isn't literature class. So there's nothing to interpret. We're not doing like deep textual analysis. It's just, can you read one of the video game articles and find 3 things in the article to respond to? And if it's not the Mark Lewis article, it's the second one, the NewsGuard article, where it's an interview with a superintendent and someone else about the steps they're taking to combat video game addiction among students at I think it's a high school, maybe. So yeah, find 3 points that you can essentially talk about. And you do have an example, okay? So you do have a sample. So this person's responding to a completely different article. Let's be honest, America, dogs are parasites, not man's best friend. But you can see the strategy this person used. First, they introduce the author's name. They do mention the article. They describe the gist of what the article is about. And this person has a pretty sophisticated thesis because this person actually lays out the three main points they want to make. His argument is weak. Okay, his argument weakens when one considers A, the emotional dependence dogs have on humans, B, the thousands of years of evolution separating dogs from wolves, and C, the impossibility of the author to know exactly what a dog is or is not thinking. You can make a thesis like that lists your 3 points, or you can have a generalized statement that just communicates that you agree, you disagree, or somewhat disagree, or somewhere in between. You should find, I think, more subtle language than just saying I agree, I disagree, I'm somewhere in between. But your sentence would communicate that sentiment. And then that's what this person does. Okay. So first, he discusses his first point. It begins with a clear topic sentence. This article criticizes dog owners and attempts to argue that the love and affection we give is lost on dogs. Okay. And notice how much time he spends explaining what the author has to say. Okay. The author attempts to establish by citing a quote and so on, and then responds. Okay. The author neglects to consider blah blah blah. So yeah, you can look at this example, right, and kind of try to do the same thing, or you can remember what I just showed. This here, okay? You're going to have an introduction of some sort, and then you're going to find 3 things in the article to talk about. But yes, you begin by describing or explaining the article's point. Okay? So you begin with the article. Why does this have a little red squiggly under it? That's right. Articles, it's spelled right. Yeah, it should be possessive. I hate it when it does that. Okay. Any questions at this point? Do people get the overall gist of what I'm talking about, like the basic shape that we're aiming for? And I should say, like, this might be maybe you only have 2 things you want to focus on, and this is a point that the article leaves out, glosses over. Okay, but yeah, we're talking about a multi-paragraph essay where you're in conversation with the article. Okay, so it's much easier than you think, much easier. Just find like 2 or 3 points in the article that you feel like you can respond to. Now, someone earlier mentioned first person. Can you use first person in this essay? Yes. Mostly though, if you're going to use like personal anecdote or talk about yourself. Again, most of those I believe, I think, I feel. Always when I return the paper, you're going to see the comments from me that just say delete, 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 because they're unnecessary, right? It's understood that the reader is reading your beliefs and thoughts and feelings. But sure, if you want to begin with an anecdote, like my best friend and I have been playing video games since we were in 2nd grade. However, my friend Johnny recently has his homework, his grades have declined, his blah blah blah, and this is because he plays video games 24. I don't know. I'm obviously not articulating it very well, but the point is, if you're writing about yourself or someone you know, basically you're drawing upon you and your life. Then yeah, absolutely, you can use personal experience to make a point. Matthew says, "What if something is unclear? Like what? Like what? I'm not sure. Is this related to the point of view issue?" I mean, I think yes, there are people who can use first person too if it's a very voice driven piece. But even then, like all the I think, I feel, I believe, if that's what you were asked about, Matthew, then really, it's. I wish I had an example to give you, but it's like you take out the I think, and the statement still, it's like clearly stating something. It's not like it's unclear or ambiguous. It's just we get into these patterns of putting in fillers like I think, I believe, I feel, in my opinion, it is my opinion that, and yeah, almost always I just say, okay, Matthew says Disney owns Hulu and the article. Okay, but I'm still not sure if I follow what you're asking. If it's related to this, like you just have to choose one of the articles and respond to it, and it's notions. If there's some sort of contradiction, um, does Disney own one of the articles that was published? Did I miss something? Like they own the website that the article was published under? Um, I, I mean, I don't know if that's something that's important enough to bring up in your essay. I mean, okay, if it's something that the article never mentions and it's something that you think is kind of important, then absolutely that could be something you raise here, like a point that the article leaves out or glosses over. I'm embarrassed because if that's true, then I never noticed that. So if it is like a super pro Disney Plus article and it leaves out the fact that you're reading something that Disney owns, then sure, absolutely point that out. Actually, that's kind of a brilliant insight. And like I said, I'm embarrassed that I didn't know that. Um, we will get moving because we're actually ahead of schedule, but let me look real quickly because I need to use a sample article anyways to show you how to quote and use an in-text citation. So, Disney Plus. Well, it's published by The Atlantic. The Atlantic isn't owned by Disney, is it? Like The Atlantic is a pretty, I thought, independent magazine. The Atlantic, the New Yorker. Although corporate ownership gets so complicated that I have no idea anymore. But let me choose one of these articles at random. Okay. Here I'll choose the Harry Potter one because what I want to show is how to quote because it says in the instructions you should be quoting at least once or paraphrasing, and so I'm going to show how to do this. By the way, APA is the style system used in all Full Sail classes, so it doesn't disappear just when English class ends, and your future instructors will expect you to know the basics. So the basics include paragraphing, right? Like double spacing, using Times New Roman, indenting the first line of a new paragraph, and also how to basically quote and include it in a text citation, and how to create references. So if you can have those three things down, you should be fine. Now, I want to see, do I have that template that I created in week one already built? I mean, I can recreate it really quickly, but here, final paper. No, that's something else. Okay, I'll just open up new document. And this will just take me 2 seconds. And anybody who needs a quick review, well, you'll get another quick review. So Times New Roman 12 points. It should be double spaced. And you put your name, and then what is it that we include at the top? What comes next? Name of the class and name of the assignment. Netflix boasts 130.9 million subscribers worldwide, and Amazon has more than 100 million, with their closest competitor Hulu quite far behind at 25. They never say that Hulu is owned by Disney. Okay. Oh, okay. It's a detail in the article that you're talking about. Yeah. I mean, listen, Matthew, if it's an important point, absolutely you can raise that as like the thing that the article leaves out. You'll have to figure out what that means, like why it's important that it leaves that out or why it should be mentioned. But yeah, absolutely, you can focus on that. Okay, so your name, the name of the class, name of the assignment. I think that it's maybe now the 2.5. Well, actually, we're in week three. It's the 3 point something, 3.5, 3.4. Are we still okay? Good. I think we lost our double spacing. Okay. Right, and then you're going to settle your title, or you're going to write your title. So you can come up with your own original title, or you can just put response Ah, to our video games really addictive? I think I've told you before that the new MacBook keyboards are awful. Like they're so shallow you can't get a grip on them. I'm actually a really good typist. I can type like 70 or 80 words per minute, but not on this keyboard. Uh, and by the way, the special capitalization rules where you do this only applies to the references. Okay? If the title appears anywhere else, you do capitalize every major word and you put it in quotation marks. That's one of the confusing things about APA. It's not as like consistent as MLA. Okay, so there's our title, and we begin on the left. We indent. You can start typing here. Remember, I did this in week 1. So let me fill up a bunch more space, and then we're going to incorporate a quote. Okay, let me grab all that and keep copying even more. When you get to a period, you hit your space bar twice. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, now let me just copy all of this to pretend that we got a whole bunch of paragraphs. And remember, when you get to the end of a paragraph, you hit enter just once, indent with the tab key, and keep going. Enter, indent, keep going. Enter, tab, keep going. And whenever the paper stops, like let's say it stops here, then you can just type references, no colon, no bolding, no works cited or bibliography. It's just called references, very simple. And it will be centered. And when we're ready to put our references, we do. But now we're talking about in-text citations, because so far you haven't had to quote. So let's imagine this paragraph we need to include a quotation, or you've decided you're going to put a quotation here. Now keep in mind, I'm choosing an article at random. I'm just going to grab anything. That's not what you're going to do. You should choose a quotation, probably on the shorter side, because if it's longer than 40 words, you've got to put it in a whole different format, which can be confusing. It's not confusing, but why do that, okay? So I'm going to just grab from this article, Why Everyone Should Read Harry Potter. Let me just grab something. Here, for decades it's been known that an effective means of proving negative attitudes and prejudices is through intergroup contact. Okay, don't know if that's really great. And by the way, you can do this. You don't have to take an entire sentence. You can take just a chunk of something. Okay, so I'm just going to take this chunk. Now the idea is it should fit comfortably within your entire paragraph. Someone should read the beginning of your paragraph, get to the end of the paragraph, and even though a quotation appears, you never get lost or stumble. Okay, so it's a little bit flawed because I'm not really showing that. But we have two options. This gets people confused because it's sort of like choose your own adventure. You can mention the author's name in your actual sentence. So this author's name is Brett Stetka. Okay, so you can say something like, according to Brett Stetka, and if you mention the author's name in your sentence, you have to immediately put the year in parentheses. It's just a rule. Okay, that author's name appears in your sentence, boom, you put parentheses in the year. So according to Brett Stetka, quote, and of course it messes up everything. So, and that function doesn't work. So let me real quickly fix times new Roman 12 points. Make sure you do this as well, because I do see students who copy things over and it's in a completely different font. Like here, even the color has been changed. It's like gray, so I'm going to make it black. So do fix those things. Okay. So according to Brett Stucca, quote, here's the end of the quote. And then we have to have another set of parentheses where we identify the page or paragraph number. Now these articles are all online, so they're going to be paragraph numbers where you count the paragraphs. 1, 2, it's in paragraph 3. Okay, so we use the abbreviation PARA, all lowercase, period, space, 3, end parentheses, period. Notice the period doesn't go here. It seems like it should, right? But no. The sentence actually doesn't end until the citation is finished. Because if you put it here and not here, you have a weird new sentence that begins paragraph 3. You can start no. So we put the period at the end of the sentence, which is after the citation. Okay, so I'll highlight it so you can see it more clearly. Here's a classic sort of pattern to follow. Okay. According to author's name, year, deliver the quote. Once the quote is over, list the paragraph number. Or you don't have to mention the author's name at all. You just find your own way to lead into the quotation. So you could say, according to the article, comma, quote, for decades it's been, and then you save everything for the end. Author's last name, Stetka, comma, year of publication, 2014, comma, paragraph number. Okay, so it's your choice. There are two completely different ways to do it. And it's all based on whether you mention the author's name in the article or not. The other option is to paraphrase, which is kind of the same thing. Okay, so you could say, according to Brett Stetka, and because you mention his name, you put the year in parentheses, and then you just state the same information, but in your own words. Okay, now this is actually a quote that you probably would want to use the exact wording. So I'm just going to imagine something, okay? So I'm going to paraphrase, according to Brett Stetka, studies have shown that contact among individuals can help to combat prejudice. Okay, so I'm saying things in my own words. That's not actually a great paraphrase of what he said, but okay, it's my words. That's a paraphrase. You're saying things completely in your own words. You're not borrowing any language really from the original quotes, but you are saying things completely in your own words. So you're not putting quotation marks around it, but you're still giving credit because they're not your ideas, and you're done. Okay, because there's nothing to only direct quotes do we need to glue that extra information about a paragraph number, or we could just again, according to the article, studies have shown that blah blah blah, and then at the very end in parentheses Stetka, comma, year, and that's it. Okay, so the difference is when you paraphrase something, you say something in your own words, but it's ideas that come from the article. You just need a name and a year. But if you quote directly, you need a name, a year, and a paragraph number. And you can either have it all come at the end, or you can split it up. This is probably the thing that confuses students the most, and I get it. I've been working with APA so long that I find none of this confusing. But if you're brand new to APA, it does seem a little bit chaotic, right? That there's not like one way to do things you can choose. Like I said, with the article capitalization, if you mention the name of the article in the essay or at the top in the title, you do capitalize every major word and put it in quotation marks, but not in the references. And the references are just like I taught before. So, Lewis, Mark, first initial, period. I forget the date of his article. I think it's like 2018, June 20th, right? So year, comma, full name of month, not abbreviated, date, and then the article title. And here you follow special capitalization rules, where you capitalize just as you would a regular sentence. If you want to, you can put in the publication name. It's not a requirement if it's an online piece, but you can if you want to. But if you do, it's italicized and then retrieved from. And then even though this isn't the website for that article, I'm going to take it just as an example, drop it in there, get rid of the hyperlinks. I hate that. If you do it, I don't care, but I hate it. I like it to be it should be double spaced. And then we don't indent the first line, but if it goes down to a second or third line, we do. So we just grab that bottom hourglass, slide it, boom. Okay. So again, easy peasy. And at this point, I do get kind of angry when people can't create a reference because usually I've corrected it for you in your past summary. Like I've gone in and said, look below, here's how your reference should look. So when a person can't even copy and paste it over to their new, so the stakes are raised a bit on APA. And again, you have an example. Oh, this isn't the assignment, but actually, I think I already have it open. Do I? Do I not? Oh, I get so confused. But anyway, you do have an example. Okay. We are reaching the end, and for some reason, I've lost people. We had 3 students, and only Matthew is left. So Matthew, thank you for hanging in there. Was I so terrible tonight that people were dropping like flies? I do keep these things short. I mean, we've only gone 40 minutes. But anyway, you do have an example. Okay. I'm still in the wrong assignment. But Matthew, if you have any more questions, feel free to ask them. If you don't have to hang around because I am at the end of the lecture. Here we go, 3.5. So you have, oh, I know I'm being confused because it's still labeled 2.4. I got to fix that. And I already had it open. So I'm looking for something I already had open. Okay, but the same thing here. Okay, this is an APA format. Yeah, I can nitpick. There shouldn't be this extra space here. The word references is missing, should be centered. But otherwise, yeah, this looks perfect. Okay, so either follow along with my walkthrough or just take a look at the sample paper. Look at his reference and you do the exact same thing. Okay, it should be easy, easy, easy. And APA is the style system used in all Full Sail classes. I think I mentioned this last week, right? Where there are instructors who are pretty easygoing and others who are really nitpicky. I've seen students lose massive points in other classes because their APA was off. So we're teaching those basics so you can get them down. Sometimes students think that, I just need this for English class and who cares? But no, you're going to see it again and again and again. So why not get it down? Especially when it is so easy. Okay. So that's it. Questions, comments? You're welcome, Matthew. You have a good night too. I'm going to stop the recording now. Thanks, everyone.